Hello and good evening, everybody. Hope you're ready for some more OCD CBT. I know I am. I've got my book and I have my two therapy dogs. So let's begin, shall we? You remember, we was about to read this bit: probability and awfulness. So let's begin, shall we? An important idea that keeps OCD going is that even if something bad happening is unlikely, you should still do everything to try to prevent it, i.e. inflated responsibility belief. So the probability or likelihood of something bad happening interacts with how awful it would be if it did happen. That is to say, it might not happen. Excuse me, itchy nose. But if it did, it would be so terrible that my life would effectively be over and I could have prevented it. For example, a person who feels contaminated worries that their hands have HIV on them. See, I just worried that my hands were a bit sweaty, and just have, just one or two that makes it slightly dirty. I'm kind of lacking compared to some of these people, I think. It may not seem very likely, but if they really are contaminated, then there is some chance that their children would get infected, come ill and later die horribly. When all they needed to do was a little washing. Yeah, I'm getting this so far. Obviously, washing in these circumstances makes short-term sense. What's the problem with washing when the stakes seem so high? That is very true. I mean, sure, washing your hands is a slight inconvenience, but you know what's worse? The consequences of not doing it. So I'm gonna get this up a little bit. There we go. That's better. That's better. There's nothing wrong or unusual with taking responsibility for preventing something bad happening. Most people take steps to prevent accidents or harm coming to themselves or others. Examples could be installing locks on the front door, driving carefully, reporting a gas leak, not dropping banana skins on the street, or not serving a friend rotten food. Yeah, I'm with this so far. However, most people are able to make do with only one lock on the door. They don't spend time every day checking for gas leaks or the presence of banana skins. This is because while most people think that bad things can happen, they don't believe that they are particularly likely or probable, and if they did happen, they think that it might not be that bad, or that they would deal with it if it happened. That is, itchy back shoulder. That is, even if there is a gas leak, or was a gas leak I should say, it's unlikely that anyone would die. Even if someone did slip in a basket, they would get a bruise rather than a broken neck. But you know what? They could get a broken neck. That small gas leak could kill a lot of people. Think about it, people. Think about that. People with OCD go to great lengths to avoid bad things happening. That is very true. They tend to focus on the worst possible thing, focusing on how awful it would be if it did happen. People with OCD feel that what they fear is likely to happen and are very motivated to avoid the possibility that they could be responsible if they did not try to prevent it happening. The above situations are more examples of the solution becoming the problem. There's a bit down here called Key Ideas. Key Ideas, the toxic trio. People with OCD think that three bad things. Number 1, they are likely to happen. Number 2, would be very awful if they did happen. And number 3, are their responsibility to prevent from happening. Think of the examples of appraisals on pages 56 to 58. If you thought that those bad things happened, what would you do? Perhaps some of the examples are similar to your own concerns. Now, if we go back to page 56, if you remember, when we went through all these, we're not going to go through them again. And we're on to the next bit. Superstition and magical thinking. Some people with OCD describe what is sometimes called magical thinking, or in one type of magical thinking, thought-action fusion. Okay. This is driven by another common set of beliefs that can become more extreme in OCD. For example, many people believe that saying or thinking something bad at someone else makes it more likely that something bad will happen. For For example, tempting fate. I understand tempting fate all too well. Most people are brought up not to say bad things about others, often with a cultural or religious undercurrent that there will some negative consequences should they do so. Magical thinking in OCD is an extension of the very mainstream of this very mainstream thinking, the belief that unpleasant, unacceptable thoughts can influence events in the world. Magical thinking in OCD is an extension of this very mainstream thinking, the belief that unpleasant, unacceptable thoughts can influence events in the world. It fits with things like superstitions, belief in horoscopes, and so on. Now, funny story for you right there. If someone ever asks me what my horoscope is, I say I'm too skeptical to believe in horoscopes because I'm a Libra. By nature, we are very skeptical people. And I can tell you now that most people don't get the joke. Doesn't stop me from telling it though. Interestingly, despite the strong cultural message that saying or thinking certain words is unlucky or might jinx things, or that crossing your fingers means something doesn't count, I do this all the time. Heck, when I'm walking on the street, I always walk on 2 drains. I avoid 3, but I walk on 2. I won't pass under ladders. And actually, I think they're the only real 2 street-based superstitions there are. Okay, hoping my light is okay. I hope it doesn't go out tonight. Otherwise, this video will be ending prematurely. Interestingly, despite the strong cultural message that saying or thinking certain words is unlucky or might jinx things, or that crossing your fingers means that something doesn't count, most people also accept that this couldn't possibly work for positive events. For example, buying a lottery ticket and saying I'm going to win tonight doesn't make it more likely that the numbers will come up. In fact, most people, also accept that this doesn't really work for negative events. I do, but I still do it though. If thinking about someone actually dying actually made them die, people basically would be in demand as assassins. Then that would be an interesting world. I could take out people who cause harm to others. I could make a good living too. I wouldn't have to make this damn vlog. I'd be able to afford one of those really, really expensive therapists that would probably fix me. Although probably not now, I'd probably still do better reading this book. It's a great book, people. If you get a chance, find a copy online and buy it. Where was I? Think how easy it would be to get rid of dictators or serial killers. Oh, I just said this. I said bad people, but we knew what I meant. If we could just imagine them dying. Yes, it is. Excuse me. Research note. 2 experts in OCD coined the phrase thought action fusion and identified 2 main themes in this thinking. Number 1. Likelihood thought action fusion. The belief that having an unwanted, unacceptable thought increases the likelihood that a specific adverse event will occur. I.e., if I think about falling ill, it makes it more likely that I will become ill. That is very true. Number 2. Moral. So I'm not saying this word right. M-O-R-A-L. Moral. Doesn't sound right, but I'm going to put the word on the screen right now. Okay, so you know which one I mean. Thought action fusion. Believe that having an unacceptable intrusive thought is almost the moral equivalent of carrying out that particular act. I.e., if I think about swearing in church, this is almost as bad as actually swearing in church. And funny enough, I remember growing up, I was told that thinking the bad thing is just as bad as doing it. Sometimes worse. That is supposedly according to the Bible. I don't know whereabouts that is in the Bible, but apparently it's in there. Although I personally think that if it does say that, I think it's probably more say trying to warn us that thinking bad things can lead to doing bad things sometimes. So it's best to avoid bad thoughts if possible. But I'm just guessing here. I don't actually know this. Much like I claim to believe in God and not believe in it at the same time, I have a Bible, but I've never actually read it. Always said I was going to. I got it on an audiobook. But I haven't listened to it yet. It's about 48 hours long now. So I probably never will. You think? It's on my Audible account. I think I've had it there since I first joined up. Right, next bit. Not trusting your senses / doing something until it feels right. Consider locking the front door. Most people turn the key. The lock makes a clunking noise and they walk away without thinking any more about it. However, it all seems a bit different if you suffer from OCD, and this focuses on checking doors and the threats not having properly locked up. Typically in this type of OCD, people stop trusting their senses, doubt their memory for what they would have done, and abandon their usual ways of deciding that they have performed an action. So in locking the front door, itchy nose. Sorry, let's go back to it. So in locking the front door, people with OCD might doubt whether they actually did turn the key and hear the clunk. I do this a lot. Wondering whether they were instead actually remembering locking the door yesterday. They may try to remember more clearly or try to remember whether they saw the door wide open as they walked away. To try to be more certain, they may repeatedly push at the door before leaving. Yes, I do this. Sorry, let's start the sentence again. It goes on. Try to be more certain, they may repeatedly push at the door before leaving. Look back at the door while walking down the street, repeatedly saying today's date. Take a picture of the door with their camera phone in case of the latest out, and if that is not enough, go back and check if they're still not certain. I do this all the time. The amount of times I go out and I would come back home 5 minutes later thinking, I better make sure I lock the front door. It sounds funny, but it isn't. It's quite distressing. Other similar aspects of the problem are getting it just right, or doing something until it feels right. This could include ordering the cupboards in a particular way, getting up and down from a chair, saying prayers or washing hands. Almost seems like they are making these decisions as if their life depended on it, but that's because that's how it feels sometimes. In fact, that is the key to understanding the desire to keep repeating obsessional actions until it feels just right. Most people don't focus on how they feel about something and use that feeling to decide whether to make the decision to stop, checking, washing their hands and other ordinary decisions. However, people do use their feelings to decide whether they know enough, are sure enough, or have done enough for very important decisions. Think about taking a new job, getting married, moving to a new house. How do you decide? I've not gotten married, so I can't really say. Remember once I wanted to get engaged to a woman, but that was it. Oh, lost one. Let's see where we headed. Here we go. Back to it. Found a bit. How do you decide? Well, to make that kind of decision, most people gather all the information they can get. They go through it again and again. They get advice from other people, they test it out in any way they can, and keep going until it feels right. If it doesn't feel right, then the person will decide that contrary to the evidence, they should keep at it until they feel much more sure. Now, most people don't do this for things like stopping, washing their hands, or checking the door, or mentally checking things out for the simple reason. Where was I? How do I lose myself when I'm actually looking at the book, people? Help me out here. Okay. Now, most people don't do this for things like stopping, washing their hands, or checking the door, mentally checking things. Sorry, I thought I saw something. Just turns. I thought I saw something on my camera then, people. Sorry about this. But it turns out I just forgot to turn the Wi-Fi off. Let me do it now quickly. Just got a notice on my phone. Very distracting. For a moment I thought the phone was recording something here. For a split second I freaked the frick out. Don't know if it's visible on the camera. Now I just got to work out where the frick I was. Let's just start in. Now, most people don't do this for things like stopping washing their hands, or checking the door, or mentally checking things out for the simple reason that most people don't think these things are a matter of life or death. However, people with OCD do, and as a result treat decisions like when to stop washing and checking like other people do for very important reasons. As described above, for the person with OCD, deciding when to stop is a very, very important decision. So they put all their efforts into the attempt to be completely sure before they can move on to the next thing they need to do. So it's not surprising that people with OCD take so long to complete things connected to their obsessional fears. The person with contamination fears is, from their point of view, I swear I itch a lot when I stick this camera on. Should be nervous because I've been doing this for about 6 months now. Anyway, back to it. From their point of view, making a life or death decision when they decide that they are clean enough. I get that. Research tells us, unfortunately, that these ways of making a decision by repeating things over and over has the odd effect of making us less confident about the thing that we are checking. And therein lies the irony. This is probably because our memory becomes less clear as we repeat things. Which occasion are we remembering? The first time or the 20th time? However, if we do things once only, then our memory will typically be clearer. We remember reasonably confidently when we do things once. When we repeat things, our confidence gets progressively lower. Notice that the research tells us that this is true for everyone, and the people with OCD are not different from those without, except that people with OCD are much more likely than everyone else to repeat things in this way. Now the problem is that having tried once to be completely certain, this tends to make us feel that it is sufficiently important to try to do the same thing again and again and again. Having found it difficult before, it is no surprise that it is difficult the next time. For example, if you check the door for half an hour on Monday, you can't get away with checking it for 10 minutes on Tuesday. Usually only the full half hour will feel right, and usually more and more time is required to get the just right feeling. As OCD continues, the person finds that they get less satisfaction about whether things are right or not, for more and more time, but for practical reasons they have to finish before things feel right, making them feel more and more uneasy. This is yet another of the pernicious vicious cycles which are involved in turning moral worries into crippling OCD. Impossible criteria and the need for certainty. We sometimes refer to impossible criteria in OCD. This is when the problem asks you to do something that is actually impossible, i.e., to be sure that something was 100% clean, to be 100% certain. As this is unachievable, no amount of checking, washing, or repeating will ever be enough. Furthermore, trying to be completely certain of something makes you look for any chinks in the armour of certainty. Given that certainty is a feeling, this process is bound to increase doubt. We all feel more stable in conditions of certainty. I also know that we have enough money coming in, that we can trust our loved ones are generally there for us, that we have a roof over our heads and are generally well. However, if we said that we had to be completely 100% certain of those things before we could do anything, we would no doubt struggle greatly. We live life according to our best assumptions and deal with problems when they occur. One of the most difficult versions of this problem involves checking our memory. Most people with OCD are particularly worried about whether or not they have done something to harm others. For example, you may be concerned that you might have knocked someone over when you walked or drove past. To make sure that you have not done so, you look back the way you came. Was someone lying on the ground? Later you go over this memory in your mind again and again. Are you really sure that there was no one injured? Are you really sure that there was no one injured? Do you have a clear memory that there was nothing going on behind you? How clear is your recollection? The problem here is that we can never have a clear recollection of something that didn't happen, or that we didn't see. How could we? But if you suffer from OCD, you really want to be completely clear and certain. If you don't have a clear memory, how certain can you possibly be? As you try again and again to form a clear memory of what didn't happen, as with other types of memories, repeated checking of the memory makes you less and less confident about it. Linked to this is the attempt to reconstruct memory. There are 20 people standing in the group as you drove past. When you looked in your car mirror to try to make sure that you didn't hit any of them, you saw the group again. Later you try to remember all of them. Were they all there? What did they look like afterwards? Again, you are trying the impossible memory feat. You are not only bound to fail, but also bound to be upset about not being sure. The more upset you get, the harder you try to be sure, the more confused you feel. Again, a range of vicious circles click in. None of these things is abnormal. Research on eyewitnesses shows that people have particular difficulties in recalling things which didn't happen. The scrupulous lawyers know that if you question people, were you 100% sure that he wasn't there, doubts creep in, and the harder that a person is pushed about how sure they are, the more they begin to doubt. For a person with OCD is that unscrupulous lawyer, and to make it worse, it knows your innermost thoughts. Notice that all of these problematic reactions motivated not just by fear of harm, but by the fear of being responsible for harm, which in turn motivates enormous effort directed towards making sure that the person cannot be blamed for the feared disasters. And one, the last bit, which will be quite short. It's called avoidance. Avoidance is one of the most common strategies to deal with fears and to deal with growing obsessions and compulsions. At its worst, avoidance can utterly destroy a person's life. For example, leading them to completely avoid their loved ones. OCD can make people become housebound, like being an agoraphobic, and avoidance can mean that the sufferer is completely paralysed, taking one position for literally hours on end. Equally, the avoidance can become both subtle and complicated, so that although it consumes the person's entire time and effort, the outside observer would notice little wrong. And that, people, is all for tonight. I hope you've learned something. I feel I have. I have learned more about my OCD. And if you have OCD, then I hope you've learned something too. I would also recommend that you buy this book or maybe another one. I'm sure there's loads out there about this subject which are all good. I don't really know because I've not read any of the others. However, I like this one. And so, it's good night from me. It's good night from Jennifer Slopez and Slow Down Milosevic. Good night, everyone. Bye.